celebrated annually across the globe during the last week of September. That started way back in 2009. In 2018, it was celebrated together with the official International Day of Sign Languages that was declared by the United Nations for the first time. The International Week for the Deaf this year is running under the theme of building inclusive communities for all. Now, according to the Uganda National Housing and Population Census of 2014, there are 1,083,649 deaf people in the country. This accounts for about 3% of Uganda's population. If I may attempt some work at statistics, 8 years down the road, that figure should now be at 4%. Joining me for this discussion is Legal Officer at ISA, Elizabeth Atori, as well as Robert Nkwangu, and Executive Director at UNED for Perspective. I've introduced two people, but on set you're seeing three. That means one is going to be interpreting for us what Mr. Robert Nkwangu shall be saying. It's an experience that will of course open our eyes to so much as a challenge in the community of the deaf in the country. Allow me say my welcome remarks to Elizabeth Atoli, a legal officer at ISA, as well as Robert Nkwangu, the ED at UNED. A very warm welcome, lady and gentlemen.
Thank you very much for having us. We are very grateful for this opportunity that will give us a space to, as you said, highlight the challenges that the deaf community face, and also really bring to light how difficult it is for the deaf to communicate with non-deaf people, and also to speak to particularly the access of services. As you said, we are currently in the International Deaf Week. It's really, and 23rd will be the International Sign Language Day, and it really shows the importance that we need to develop the sign language within the country, and also ensure that we are providing inclusion for everyone. So I'm really happy to be here, and I look forward to the discussion. Okay,
warm welcome, Mr. Robert Nkwangu. Your opening remarks.
Oh yes, thank you very much, Chris. Good morning, NTV. Good morning, viewers. Good morning, listeners. My name is Robert Nkwangu, and it's quite very important to have this very week for deaf people where we celebrate the achievements and, of course, building inclusive communities, because sign language unites us all. And that's why we are here with Higenyi, talking together with you, our viewers. It's very, very good because you could remember that years ago, deaf people were really hidden in the communities, were outside there in the backyard. But this kind of awareness is bringing people like me on board. We are tapping to different opportunities, different services. And over the years, we are gaining confidence. And from the backyard, we are coming to the aspect of inclusion in society, which we are all pushing for. And this is the agenda that we are driving at, for equal opportunities for everyone. And this very week, we shall be celebrating the achievements we have gotten over the years, but also look at the challenges and how we can mitigate them moving forward. Thank you very much, Chris.
All right, thank you very much. Now, for those that are watching, it's a unique experience on a show like this, where we would have chosen to do an inset so that the sign language interpreter does their particular work. We said no, we need to be able to experience exactly what challenges many of our brothers and sisters within the deaf community could be experiencing when it comes to interfacing with many of the stakeholders that could be well in position to address this particular issue. Allow me go to Madam Elizabeth Atwoli and ask about the challenges within for education of people in the deaf community. Government has allocated a lot of funds. There are so many initiatives by so many stakeholders to ensure that this issue is addressed. But year in, year out, the same questions are asked, the same issues are being sought to be addressed. Somebody somewhere could be dropping the ball. I don't want to put you on the spot where you you find yourself pointing fingers at anybody, but just bring us up to speed with the critical challenges and how effort is being designed to ensure that they are actually addressed.
Thank you very much, Chris, for actually putting me at gunpoint on this one. It's hard to answer that question without clearly identifying the key stakeholders that are supposed to ensure inclusiveness for the deaf community. But I'll start from this. I work for an organization that is called the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights. And we too asked ourselves the question, where's the problem? Where are the challenges? Why aren't we able to see that everyone is able to access public services, let's say public education? And we undertook research. We've had research in Bujiri around access for education for deaf people, and also generally children with disability, to understand why they are not able to access these services. And I'll start right from the beginning. Constitutionally, we know that the deaf have their rights that have been guaranteed under our Constitution, the right to non-discrimination, the right to dignity, health, education, and the same rights that we have as non-deaf people are the same rights that deaf people also enjoy.
That's
and
right.
This government has gone a step forward and come up with the Disability Act of 2020, which clearly highlights, in respect to education, some of the things that an institution that is providing such a service should be able to provide. And what the Act says is that for an institution that provides education services for people that are disabled, they need to go over and above and provide particular things. For the deaf, one of the key things that they state is that they need to provide sign language interpretation within the institution. Whether that happens or not, again, is a question that we ask ourselves, why isn't it happening? And how can we ensure that it happens? The Act says if a learner is admitted into school, then they shouldn't discriminate against them. They should be able to access the services. So in this case, they are accessing the learning material, they are accessing the teaching, and for the deaf, and I'm glad Robert is here, he's much more is in a better position to highlight some of the communication needs of the deaf. If you're going to instruct a learner, you would need to use sign language, because as you can see, they will not be able to hear the teacher. And we've gone through phases in this country. In the beginning, we pretended that people with disability were not amongst us. And because there were too few, we decided not to do anything about it. And then we moved from that particular phase and understood that, okay, we need to put in place some measures of affirmative action for these particular individuals. And one of the things, as you can see, is the need to put in place sign language interpretation. But now we are somewhat stuck at this phase, beyond the legislation, beyond the laws and the policies that have been put in place. We haven't been able to move and actually implement these policies.
Okay.
So that is the challenge.
That's the challenge.
Yeah, for some time we thought as a country that special needs schools would be the answer to the challenges around education for the deaf. But as you can see, there are just a few special needs schools in this country. You'll see that there is one in Ntinda. There is another one that Robert also will speak to, where we are going to have our celebrations in Iganga. But if you see how far apart these schools are, that means for anyone that's not around the community of those schools, and they are deaf, they have to move their children to those special needs education schools. Yeah, so the challenges really stand out in terms of the lack of access to information, the information that is being shared with deaf children, with the deaf community is not accessible to them, but also challenges in terms of finances, the financing for the interpretation by the deaf. If the government is not stepping up to provide a sign language interpreter, then it's supposed to be the deaf child to
Miss Elizabeth Twoli, allow me engage Robert Nkwangu on what you described as a holistic education system that targets the ability of deaf persons to access education. Mr. Nkwangu, you are deaf. That means you have come a long way within the pipeline to be able to become executive director, and you understand the nitty-gritty of just about the needs, the challenges, but also the opportunities for people who are deaf. Take us through what the action points are for this particular week, the International Week for Deaf Persons, and the awareness that will come with it, and what exactly we should look at, or what you need actually the government to look at, without necessarily talking about the fact that funds have come in, so people should be able to figure out exactly what should be done.
Yes, thank you very, very much. I love what you say that over the years we have gotten experience, because since I was a child when I became deaf, because of the poor medical conditions that I went through, and since then I've gotten a lot of challenges that I've gone through, and I've lived experience in what I am today, and of course becoming the director of UNAD, a lot of things have happened, and I need to be appreciative for my life because of the things that I've gone through. And the International Week for Deaf People is an opportunity to show the different challenges that we have gone through as a community, and also to call upon different stakeholders, including government, development partners, to have deaf persons included in all their programs. Because at times, the issue may not be about the negative attitude of the rest of the community, but at times they don't know, their awareness is kind of limited. They don't know how, they cannot address the issue of how, they don't know which schools to go to, they don't know how their children can learn, they don't know where they can learn sign language from. So it is the question of how. And this week is an opportunity to show that those with the hearing loss or the deaf can really be successful in life, and they can really tap into the different services and opportunities around them. Therefore, this is an avenue for advocacy and to stop the abuse of the rights of deaf persons around the country, because we have the legislations, but the problem, just like Elizabeth said, is all about implementing. We talk about the education, take an example. There are no sign language interpreters in these schools, yet the law provides for them. The teachers don't know sign language, there's no budget allocation for this. And then I asked myself, in all our country, Uganda, how many teachers do we have, right? Maybe 5,000, let me say, take a figure of 50,000 or 5,000, but out of the 5,000, can't we get 100? Can't we get 100, or a small percentage to be interpreters out of this very big budget that is given, allocated to the Ministry of Education? Money is spent in building schools and everything, but out of the training, out of the trillions that is spent, can't we have just 1% out of all these trillions?
Yeah, sure.
Right? Look at the health budget. We don't require for a lot. Look at the medical workers there. How many medical workers are in at least one center, from management to the one who is cleaning? How many are these, right? Now, if from all those, let's say 100, right? Can't we have, out of the 100, can't we have only 10 out of that to be sign language users there in the hospitals? Because we have literally nothing at all. We have nothing, Chris. Nothing, no interpretation in any hospitals, nothing at all.
Wow.
Right? So that's the biggest challenge, that because they're talking about we don't have a budget, no interpreters, no nothing, but we have very many people. We don't need thousands. We need just a few people to put us on board, and then we begin from there. So this is advocacy that is going on to have the aspect of inclusion, and we should have equal opportunities, and deaf persons are also equal citizens, just like anyone. Yes, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Robert Nkwangu, the Executive Director there at UNAD. Time is not our best ally. I would ask Elizabeth Twali to quickly use a minute and give us your last words with regard to where the Awareness Week is going to be centering in terms of the action.
And might be, Chris, I would defer that to UNAD, because UNAD is taking lead.
The organizers, right?
Is taking lead in organizing the Deaf Week activities and to ensure that everyone is on board and all government actors are on board. What I'd like to say, Chris,
quickly,
is in terms of where do we need to go as a nation, how do we include the people that are deaf. Number one, we need to integrate sign language into our public services. Whether it's health, whether it's education, a person that is deaf should be able to walk into the facility and be able to get a sign language interpreter, so that we deal with issues around the lack of access to information. The other thing that we need to do, Chris, if you could just give me a few, is that we need to prioritize the inclusion of the deaf. The moment we prioritize this, then we are able to move forward and include every single person.
All right. Thank you very much, lady and gentlemen, for the insights. We are constrained for time. In Mubende, reports earlier today, of course, not today, but yesterday, the Minister of Health spoke about the fact that there's an outbreak of Ebola. We have a man on the ground, Mr. Stephen Mbide, who is looking, or rather interfacing, I must be very specific, with people who are heading to Mubende. And let's just go to